I'm your average action movie survivor. When I'm not busy trying to avoid massive superhero battles with people getting thrown through walls or dodging giant robots about to step on me, I'm listening to the Part-Time Fanboy podcast. Be sure to check out Part-Time Fanboy at parttimefanboy.com for somewhat weekly podcasts and reviews about various fanboy-related subjects. Also, be sure to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Do it now, because the Robopocalypse is coming!
Part-Time Fanboy.
Part-Time Fanboy doing my thing.
Doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. Oh yeah, doing part-time. Parttimefanboy.com.
This is Part-Time Fanboy. I'm Kristian Horn. I'm here with Paul Edwards.
Hello.
And I am here to get medieval on Godzilla's ass.
Whoa, it's a Kaiju smackdown.
Because I fucking hated this movie, Paul. I hated it. I can't even tell you how much I hated it. I almost walked out, dude. I almost walked out. Yeah,
wow. That would have been a shame because you would have missed the
only good
last
thing.
act, which was spectacular.
Do you think it was spectacular? I don't think it was spectacular. I thought it was okay. Like, I was like, by the time we got to it, I was just like, okay, whatever. And I thought it was, we could just start from the beginning. I don't know.
Let's start from the very beginning because it's a very good place to start. I thought it had a great credit opening sequence.
Did you see? That's where I knew I was in trouble, man. Because I felt that the credit sequence was like very 90s. It seemed a little dated to me. Like, I was like, this looks like a little like. It just seemed like I shouldn't be taking this seriously. You know what I mean? There was something about it that seemed, even the credit sequence, I was like, uh-oh, this is a little hokey to me. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I thought I was in trouble. I was like, oh, no. And then, you sort of get, obviously, spoilers for anyone that's listening to this.
Oh, yeah, we're going to spoil
the shit out of it. But I really honestly feel that, I mean, from the beginning, you're introduced to like Bryan Cranston, right? And he's great. I mean, he's just absolutely like fantastic. But there's all this like, the weaknesses of the Godzilla movies, and like, let's face it, these things are not Shakespeare, right? They're not. They're not high art. But the weaknesses of them are the human parts, right? The part where, okay, we have to sort of like get to know these people and identify with them, so that when they get smushed by Godzilla, we're sort of like feeling for them. And, you get introduced to Bryan Cranston and his family, and it's like this hokey, like, oh, it's my dad's birthday. I'm going to make a sign for him. And, oh, I love you, honey. And, they're on their way to work. And it just seems so schmaltzy to me.
Yeah, they definitely tried really hard to get us to like these characters.
Yeah.
I mean, and the first character we're introduced to is Bryan Cranston's character, who is named Joe Brody. I think Brody is probably a nod to Jaws.
Yeah.
Sure. And his wife, who Julia Binoche.
Yeah.
And it's set in a fake city in Japan.
Is it a fake city? I didn't know.
It's a made up city. It's not a real city.
Oh, that's even worse. It's like Metropolis.
I think it's like I think Gojira. I think is that what they called it.
I can't remember.
Anyway, there's he works for a nuclear power plant there. He's an engineer of the nuclear power plant there, and
she does something there too. They both work there together.
Yes.
Yes.
And so...
And they're two white people working in Japan.
They are, and he speaks Japanese, which is
Yes.
fantastic. And it's interesting because, and to Cranston's credit, he definitely sells the American working abroad thing,
Yes.
because he's clearly sort of uncomfortable with the culture shock. He gets a
Yeah.
lot of he does a really good job despite a really bad toupee.
Yes.
And
Oh my God. Like the
yeah,
wig, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, wow,
I
that's
have a, I have a friend who said, I don't remember a word he said because I was too busy staring at
I
the
know.
rug.
Yeah, he was doing Breaking Bad. I mean, something was like, I mean, obviously he probably had his head shaved for that, and they shot this like while they were in production for Breaking Bad. But I mean, so yeah, so we get introduced to him, and
And
it,
we're also introduced to his son,
yes, his
who's
son.
with the very, very movie name of Ford Brody.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and
Which Ford is probably a nod to Harrison Ford, don't you think?
could be.
Yeah.
And so they send their son off to school. It's Bryan Cranston's birthday,
Yeah.
and they had this little surprise party planned. However, there are earthquakes apparently, or seismic activity going on near the nuclear power plant.
Exactly. And
So,
and so already you've got like, oh, here's the Fukushima, sort of like theme, like this is where we're going.
although although
To
I believe that this was written before Fukushima.
no way it was
I believe
not written before
I believe
Fukushima.
I believe so.
I don't think so. I
But
don't know. We'd have to look that up, but I doubt it.
it's a definite. It's things. Oh, by the way, and this is all happening in was it 1999? Also,
Yes.
that's when we sort of jump into
Yes.
the story.
Pre
Uh,
9/11.
and so things go bad. The plant falls apart, supposedly because of an earthquake, because of a natural disaster. The wife is, heroically sacrifices herself, so that the plant doesn't melt down, and Bryan Cranston's left to, sort of grieve in the aftermath. and
Yeah.
and then and which is it's really well it's I think it's really well done sequence, actually. Like right up to that, it's great, and then we jump ahead 15 years.
Wait. So I really think that the beginning sequence, I think that you could have just gotten rid of all that birthday stuff, all that like, all that hokey, like, aren't you here to surprise? We're going to surprise daddy. It's his birthday. You could have
Well,
just jumped right into the freaking nuclear power plant. I
I,
felt
I
like,
I agree, but all of those are sort of marks of neo Spielbergianism, I guess. Like
maybe.
it's a style of movie making. I
Yeah,
really
but
think
Spielberg
you
does it so much better. I mean, this is just like, and we called it
well, not,
Fukushima. It's Fukushima, the
yeah,
power
yeah.
plant. Yeah.
Um, well, I'm not saying it's done like up to his standard, but it's definitely a hallmark style of this type of filmmaking, which and it is. It's a very Spielbergian kind of filmmaking. But whereas Spielberg generally would give you sort of a couple of moments to breathe, and it would be it just Spielberg has a way of making it seem not forced, and a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff really did feel sort of forced. It's like, hey, look, it's cute. He made this banner, and that banner is going to turn up later on, and
Yeah.
it's it's in the script. It's not necessarily done. You know, yeah. Again, the relationships don't necessarily come across. I think as um, engaging as they had hoped.
Yeah, I mean I really felt like there was something about that opening sequence that was lacking for me, and I felt that I just didn't feel any. I mean, I obviously you feel bad, it's like the
Yeah, you
dude's
do.
wife dies in front of him, but I just felt like there was such a perfect storm of like awful thing, like that he has to be there at the door, and then he has to be the one to shut the door, and then when the door closed, like her face comes into the like you said, it was just so forced, and already I'm like out, like nothing felt natural to me, nothing felt like it was organic. It just felt like this is what we're doing to try and milk every bit of sentimentality and feeling out of you.
And also. I should have mentioned that prior to this whole sequence, we had a scene that was in the Philippines. Where,
that's true.
Where we're introduced to Ken Watanabe, who I will call Exposition Son.
Yes, and token Asian man too.
Exposition Son and his assistant.
Who is what's her name again? Fantastic actress.
Sally Hawkins.
Yeah, Sally Hawkins, who is like basically like, what are you there for? Like, she's awesome. She's an amazing actress, and there's so many moments that she could have been given. I just really yeah. Anyway, go on.
There's a lot of that. Anyway, like they go to the Philippines where they were.
That's right. We forgot about
basically
all about
a mining accident has revealed a giant ancient skeleton and these two pods, these like egg-shaped pod things, and one of them has hatched and has left a trail going to the sea. So we realize, okay, yes, whatever this has hatched from this egg, that's headed over toward Tokyo, and it's the true cause of this this disaster.
And so going back though, so now you've got, not only have you got like the Fukushima like commentary, you've got like mining. You know what I'm talking about? Like they're making commentaries on, which is fine because that's a tradition in the Godzilla movies, right?
Yeah, Godzilla, has always traditionally been thought of as a sort of a commentary on nuclear power. However, whereas in the certainly in the first Godzilla movie, the 54 one, it's subtext.
Yes.
Right. Like now they just sort of come out and say it. It's like, hey, here's some symbolism for you.
Well, that's not even a thing in the original Godzilla, which I watched this weekend with my wife again, which is weird because I watched it before Pacific Rim, last year when we watched Pacific Rim. It's funny because the theme stays strong through the whole movie. While it's not like they don't pound it over your head, but the subtext is very strong through the whole movie and stays constant. Like when I was watching it with Amy, she missed like maybe the first 20 minutes or something, and she came in the room and sat down and she started watching it with me, and she's like, oh, this is a movie about something, like they're saying something, like that's interesting. And then from then on in, she was like she's like, this is actually, for the time it was made, really good. And I was like, I told you. With this movie, they start sort of like commenting on something, but then they just drop it, like it just goes nowhere. They don't follow through. They're not saying anything about anything. It just sort of devolves into like set pieces of like disaster stuff that aren't really tied into like one theme, except for the fact that it's Godzilla fighting a couple of monsters that you never really see during the whole movie. That's the thing. Like, that's what blows me away. Anyway.
Well, again, and then like jumping ahead, like, after the nuclear power plant sequence, you jump ahead 15 years into the future,
Yes.
And now you're following the son, Ford, who's grown up, and he's coming back from Afghanistan or Iraq or someplace overseas where, like right away they tell you, that he's a hotshot bomb disposal guy. Like that's literally, like they just sort of say, like, here's what he does, and he's heading back, he's living in San Francisco with his wife and kid, and suddenly, like, at least for me, it was a little jarring because it's like, oh, I thought I was following Cranston. Now, okay, so now Ford is he's the new protagonist.
Exactly. And as soon as that happens, like you said, a bit jarring, but I'm like, okay, that this could be, I don't know, interesting. But like I said, I was already kind of taken out. Like I was already like, the death scene did not make me weep. It didn't make me cry. Like I just felt like it was just like it didn't need to be there. Like I feel like that whole first chunk of the movie could have been told like maybe flashbacks, or you could have just talked about it. You know what I'm saying? It just was void of power. And then suddenly you're jumping 15 years, and like you said, it's jarring. You're like, wait, what happened to that guy?
And
like,
they really want you to like Ford and his family too.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean,
holy
cow. If you
cow.
thought the beginning was manipulative, I mean, they pull out all the stops. You know, like ooh, like acting cute, tickle your kid.
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Oh,
I'm
you
coming
know,
home, and they haven't seen each other in a long time, and they're kissing, and they're all romantic. But that's the thing.
Then there's a phone call that took him to Japan.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Is like I felt like no chemistry between them.
Well,
like I felt like I didn't feel like they were married. And what's her face? Elizabeth Olsen, is that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just felt like she was like dead wood. Like
Well,
I was like, you're not a mom. Like that's not your kid. Like I just didn't feel like that there was a bonding of a family there.
The kid doesn't give the strongest.
No, he's just like a plank of wood, unfortunately.
But yeah, and what's really, I mean, I didn't realize that Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's Ford, he's the guy from Kick-Ass.
Yeah, and he's also going to be Quicksilver.
And yeah, he's usually like very good, but here he sort of has like what I call Sam Worthington syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where you've got your leading man, and there's nothing like seriously, there's nothing bad about his performance at all.
It is kind of wooden. It's a bit wooden.
He's there, and you're just sort of expected to buy into him as the hero and follow him along, and you do follow him along. They go through they jump through some crazy hoops.
Yeah, so
get
crazy.
Him in the path of all of the monster destruction.
So yeah, there's the phone call, and then basically, right, it's a phone call saying, "Oh, your dad has been arrested."
Your dad's been arrested back in Japan, so he immediately,
And do you know what I'm thinking right there, Paul? Do you know what I'm thinking? You have not seen your wife for like a year. At least have sex, for God's sake, and then go to Japan. But no, they stop everything.
Let's talk about that, because actually one of the things I found interesting about this movie is like I believe that somebody says shit once or twice, and then there's a couple of hells. But overall, it's like a very sort of clean movie. I think they were definitely thinking of the family tie-ins there, even though there's a lot of like destruction and everything. It's not.
You don't have to show them having sex. Just say fade to black. Make it like they had. Dude, the guy hasn't had any for like God knows how long. I don't care if my dad got arrested. I'm just going to Japan. He can wait.
To make it worse, though, like he flies off right away, right after promising his kid, "Yeah, I'll be here in the morning."
Yeah, exactly.
He does. So he goes back to Japan to bail his dad out of jail, which actually leads to sort of the one funny bit in the movie where while he's waiting, a goth kid is
I know, right?
By his dad, who just goes off on him, and that was kind of funny because it's sort of universal, kids messing up kind of thing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like, they sort of, again, that they jump right into the plot. I mean, it's been sort of established that there's a conflict between Ford and his dad, over this, that, his dad never got over what happened, and it's turned him into sort of this crazy conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, crackpot. Yeah.
But like, when they finally meet each other in person, like that tension just sort of evaporates.
It's like it's very much like that scene in Tron, almost like, remember Tron Uprising, where they meet, like, and he's just like, "Hey, Dad," and I'm like, "You haven't seen your dad since you were like a little kid. There's no like you know what I mean? Like, exactly.
Good call. It's very similar to that scene.
It's just like they meet, and it's like, psh.
I think it's a modern storytelling problem where like they're in such a hurry to get to the next thing.
Exactly.
That they sort of lose sight of like those small moments of.
But here's the bigger thing, and I agree with you 100%. But we are talking about a fucking Godzilla movie, and what do you want to see in a Godzilla movie, Paul? What what do you Godzilla fighting monsters? You
Yes.
want to see Godzilla fight? Not that the whole movie has to be about Godzilla fighting monsters, but at least Pacific Rim got it right, where it was like robot fight, crazy giant monsters, pause, human, robot fight, crazy giant monsters,
Yep.
pause, human, robot, giant, crazy robot fight. You know what I'm saying? Like Godzilla, it spends so much time like on the regular people stuff, and it's like I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, but after a while, I swear, like maybe half an hour in, I was like, okay, I'm ready to walk out, because I've been in this movie called Godzilla for a half an hour and I haven't seen Godzilla. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a little different, than I think Jaws. The obvious is Jaws, because
Yeah.
that's sort of what they've been teasing at, and Jaws did a great job of like sort of teasing its monster out,
Yes.
and but it did give you those moments of like where you saw what the monster did and why it was so so scary. With this one, again, you're about not halfway through the movie, but like finally, when that chrysalis like finally hatches, and that like the Muto hatch comes out at the old the power plant, the Gojira power plant,
I was bored at that point.
well, yeah. Here's the problem. I mean, okay, and so here's the explanation is that that this monster sort of like attacked the nuclear power plant, and these are their thing with the kaiju as delivered by Exposition Son is that these are monsters from before the Earth sort of was really formed, and like they live on radiation. They like radiation is their fuel, and so
Yes.
this thing, when it was in larval form, latched onto this power plant and then basically sort of sucks it dry.
Yeah.
And
Which
the
we
reason why
yeah.
the reason why they didn't destroy it because they were worried that if they did, that it would release like that. Basically, there would be a meltdown and it would release all the radiation, everything.
Yeah. Which
this-
they discover because Bryan Cranston talks his son into
Yes.
going back to the nuclear radiation area so that he could get his floppy disks that have his data that have been sitting around on a desk for 15 years in weather, unexposed. And yes, they're going to be in perfect shape, these floppy disks.
Right
Like-
under that paper happy birthday sign.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, basically, so you've got this situation where they explain, okay, let's get back to the human stuff. They explain that Bryan Cranston and his son are estranged because Bryan Cranston is a crackpot that keeps trying to figure out what happened to the nuclear power plant, what killed his wife and the kid's mother. But he's like, we've been doing this again and again, and it keeps happening, and blah, blah, blah. Within half an hour, Bryan Cranston's convinced his son to go to the site of the nuclear power plant with him so
Yeah.
he can get the data that he needs, because whatever activity was happening 15 years ago at the power plant is happening again. And within half an hour of seeing his son, who's fed up with him, who's tired of dealing with him, who's had his life maybe ruined by his father, he's like, okay,
I'll do
let's
that.
go.
I'll
Yeah,
do that with you.
exactly. Come on.
Well, and they're caught pretty much right away.
Yes, exactly.
And they're taken to the power plant. What's left of the power plant. They see the chrysalis that's going to hatch, and they also meet Exposition Son and his
Yes.
assistant, who's actually he's Dr. Sarazawa. I think he's named after the doctor in the first Godzilla.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But and that's where they sort of explain what these creatures are, although immediately, well, actually they don't, because what happens is like while they're there and Cranston's being interrogated, the thing hatches and gets loose. And it's actually Ford who finds out about that later after, and again, spoiler alert, Cranston dies.
In the first, so
Yeah.
they get rid of their most like that scene, okay, where they're interrogating Cranston.
Yeah.
Like that was the most emotionally wrapped up that I got in it. Like when he's like, "You guys are hiding something. I want to see my son." Like I was like, dude. That's Brian. I wanted to like get up and clap and be like,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, Bryan Cranston, amazing actor.
I'll be
He's
honest
amazing.
with you. I'll be honest with you. Like when he died, you could feel the air sucking out the theater. When
It's true.
Like literally, you could kind of hear the audience like, "Oh, like we thought, oh,
Yeah.
we kind of thought that, we like." I think
Yeah.
that people had more invested in him than they had in the other characters, and so when he goes, it's kind of like, oh,
Well, not only is he the more compelling actor than anybody else in the whole movie, but he's the character that everyone's going to identify with.
yeah, because honestly, here's the thing. Bryan Cranston has the only reasonable reaction to these giant creatures out of anybody in the movie, which is to freak the fuck out.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing too. Like they all suffer from what's his face, Armageddon disease. Where it's like these amazing things happen in the movie, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's kind of cool." Like, or they're just
blasé about these giant monsters.
Exactly. It's just like, at least in Pacific Rim, it was like, and they were in a world that existed with these things. Like people still got freaked the fuck out. Like in this movie, it was just like, oh yeah, there's like this thing and it's like sitting out there, and then it hatches and starts to cause chaos, like the first beast that we see, and it's just sort of like it's underwhelming because you've been so bored up to this point that there's nothing that can pull it back from the brink, right?
Well, nothing except Godzilla.
Well, but Godzilla shows up.
Godzilla does show up. See, here's the thing. Okay, so this creature that they call the Muto, the massive unidentified terrestrial organism.
Oh my god! I can't believe you remembered that.
Yeah, it comes out of the it hatches out, and that's when basically Serizawa and all the people who managed to survive the destruction at the plant are taken away above on board a aircraft carrier.
Yeah,
and they're informed that the U.S. military is basically taking over from this point. Although
which is just like, I mean,
yeah.
Can we talk about the lack of Asian people in this movie? Because I just find that so insulting. I mean, Ken Watanabe is in it, and he's obviously a great actor, but there's I was just like, can I have some Japanese people in the movie about a monster that was created by the Japanese? I was like so mad about that. Like, I was just like, give me a break.
Right away, you're sort of informed, okay, like this is going to be like an
white
American
people
movie.
Yeah, exactly.
As soon as you're on board that carrier, like from the way it's going, they're just be like, okay, like this is officially a U.S. military versus the monster movie. This is what we're in for now. It's like, well, okay, so we go with that, and Cranston's dead, so we're like, okay, so it's another tonal shift that we're dealing with. But what we find out is that when this thing has woken up, that it woke up something else, which is our hero Godzilla.
Exactly.
Who is the they describe him as the alpha predator of his time, which is cool. I mean, it's like, okay, if you're gonna try to explain Godzilla, he kind of works as like this sort of Lovecraftian elder god kind of thing, from before the earth was formed. It's like, yeah, I can go along with that, and so,
But didn't you find the whole, like, they feed off of radiation? I just thought that was so hokey.
Well,
like, it was so, like, I like the idea of not knowing,
No, look, I don't mind that. Because it sort of makes sense, except for the fact that if they feed off of radiation, why are they heading towards San Francisco?
Yeah.
Why aren't they going to Europe?
Well, that's one of the things
that has nuclear power.
Well, that's one of the things that they say, where you dump all your nuclear. So my assumption would be that it was headed to Nevada, because you dump.
That's where the other Muto is.
Yeah,
other Muto
exactly.
has made its way to the second Muto pod had been
hidden away
from the Philippines and taken to Yucca Mountain, where all the nuclear waste is dumped, and it hatched, and what you've come to find out is that what you've got is a pair of the Mutos. One of them's a male, one of them's a female, and they're looking to spawn.
Yes.
Which is kind of interesting because I think that it ended up like giving more sympathy toward those monsters than they probably really wanted. Because
But
in a way, I was just kind of like, oh, look at them, they're just a couple of crazy kids trying to make their way in the world.
honestly, I thought that like when the first monster came out and you saw the design of it, I was just like, I thought the design of the new monsters was just uninspired and just bland and just
Well, it's a
flat.
insect. It's more of an insect type of design than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, but it's
you-
not even. It's just like the flat head. I just really felt like they just like ripped off like Cloverfield or like or Super 8. It just didn't seem like something that was original or at least or even harkening back to like past Godzilla movies, which I haven't seen every Godzilla movie. But
Yeah, well, I know that like part of it, they wouldn't want to like reach back toward any of the kaiju that they've already established. You know what I mean? Because like I feel like in a way for this movie they were sort of setting up like disposable monsters in a way. Like
I guess.
what monsters that Godzilla can fuck up and kill that's what they made.
Well, I think the design of them, like when the first one hatched, I was like, okay. Like it didn't. It's got to be awe-inspiring, and that's the thing about Pacific Rim. Those robots, the monster design, when you saw those, it was just like, wow. And when that thing hatched, I was like, okay.
Yeah. Now Godzilla, however, was pretty awe-inspiring. The way the reveals on him were really good. Now,
But they were too short.
one of the
Don't
things
you
I'm
think?
gonna like bring out there is like, okay, so the first time we see Godzilla is in Hawaii.
Honolulu. Is
Honolulu.
it Honolulu?
Yeah,
Yes.
finding it, and it was really weird for me to see like the place that I grew up like destroyed by monsters.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what happens is like, yeah, the Muto has found like a Russian submarine that was like off of Hawaii, so it went
Yeah.
toward that, and threw the submarine onto the land and ripped out the core to feed on it.
Which okay, let's go back. There's some troops that are hunting through the whatever the jungle on Honolulu, and they find the sub, and it's been cracked open. Wouldn't they just be inundated with radiation at that point? Like, wouldn't the whole area be radioactive if you cracked open a nuclear sub to eat the core?
Probably.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like you've got these soldiers marching in, and they find this sub that's like up in a tree, right, or like held up like on the side of the hill, and they just look up, and it's like, yeah. No one's measuring for radiation. No one's acting like again shocked.
Well, it's
And then
okay. They don't last very long.
yeah, they don't last very long.
Because then the Muto sort of unleashes its secret weapon, which is an EMP, which wipes out anything electrical.
Which at this point to me, it's like my eyes almost rolled right to the back of my head because
dude,
as soon as you find out it was an EMP, it's like nanites. It's like really.
That wasn't what made my eyes roll as much as having Ford at Honolulu International Airport, who's made his way off of the aircraft carrier toward Honolulu.
Yeah.
Where he then saves this little boy on a monorail, which by the way doesn't exist. That was the fakest thing from me. I was like, there's no fucking monorail at the National Airport. You get on a bus,
Yeah.
So,
That's so funny.
The big Muto attack in that destroys Honolulu.
Yeah.
You see it on a TV screen. They cut.
I
away.
know. No. You're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead. No. Because you've got the big tsunami thing, right? And you've got the people on the beach, right? And you see the water start to withdraw on the beach. And you've got the little girl in the chair, and she's like, "Daddy," and the dad turns around and he grabs his little girl. And already, again, Michael Bay syndrome. You've focused on the little girl. You know that little girl is going to survive. That little girl is not going to die. So
the dog leashed to the tree.
Yeah, it is very much like then the tsunami comes because Godzilla's coming or whatever, and the people are running through the streets and they're trying to outrun the tsunami, which like outrun the explosion, outrun whatever force of nature. That to me is like the biggest thing that just kills me in action movies. I hate it. Everyone is getting swept by the tsunami. And what happens with the dad with the little girl? He like runs into a Starbucks and closes the door, and somehow that keeps the water from going inside to the hotel. What?
Starbucks are no disaster zones. I don't know if you knew that, but
they're vacuum sealed Starbucks.
They have a contract with nature.
Yes, and then you get to see the Motu and Godzilla, and they're just about to attack each other. Here comes the big monster fight that we've all been waiting for. Yeah. And what happens?
Cut away to a television screen.
Oh my God! Cut away to the lead character's son in San Francisco watching the fight on a TV screen. Yeah. What the fuck? I almost fell out of my chair when that happened.
That was one of those choices that was just like, okay, I know you want to save the monster fight for the end. I know you want to do that, but like, man,
oh no,
couldn't you have just sort of, it was a big tease.
That was a huge mistake. And it goes to show you why they hired Gareth Edwards, because he made that Monsters movie. And the thing is some executive or somebody, some writer somewhere said, oh, well, there's all these stretches of like human people like doing things in Godzilla, which there are. I watched Mothra. With my daughter, and the first hour is like people talking about the monsters, people talking about the egg, people talking about Mothra, the two little miniature twin girl dolls begging for the egg back. But then as soon as you get to the fight, like at the end, it's a full half an hour of fucking Godzilla throwing down with Mothra and the two like little Mothra spawn larva things. With this, you don't even get that. Like, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. But you get to the moment where it's like, and then that's the thing. It's like Godzilla movies since then have evolved to like have like multiple monster fights. So why are you making me wait? This is what I paid to see. In an over 2-hour movie, you're making me wait till like the last 20 minutes to see a monster fight?
Yeah. And it's, look, I really liked Monsters a lot.
I did too.
And I think that, but part of it, is just like that the human interaction there didn't feel like as forced as it did here,
No.
and again, like just sort of the stretches that they would do to get Ford from Tokyo, where the thing hatches, to Honolulu, where the first attack happens. And then he just sort of falls in with this company that's shipping. He's like, hey, I'm in the military. And they just like, oh, okay, we need you. It's like he just walked up to this, military unit and latched onto them. And, then he immediately gets taken off to the next place that they're doing it. I mean, the twists to get him in the path of every one of these monsters were just ridiculous.
It was absolutely, I mean, this is like, remember we talked about Man of Steel last year, where it was like you started to feel like, oh, this is just moving things around for the story. They weren't even subtle about it. Like in this one, it's just like, yeah, exactly. They weren't even subtle about it. They were just like, we're going to put him here and then he's going to go there. Like nothing, again, felt organic in this movie. Everything felt planned and played out,
Let's talk about the military's plan to kill the monsters.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started. First of all, okay, so you've got like at this point the monsters are headed to San Francisco, and there is literally a scene on an aircraft carrier where they're talking about like they're watching the monsters swim to San Francisco, and they literally say, we're going to observe the monsters as they swim to San Francisco. And nobody goes, hey, jackass, don't you think we should stop them before they get to San Francisco? Like nobody, I couldn't believe it. Like you have what's his face, that brilliant actor David Strathern.
Strahan, right?
Yeah. I can't pronounce his last name. He's
Strathern,
yeah, and they give him the dumbest like dialogue where he's like, yes, we are going to observe the creatures as they head to San Francisco, and nobody's like, don't you think it's a bad idea for them to get to a densely populated city? Don't you think like maybe we might want to drop like, oh God. And then comes the big fucking ridiculous thing of the whole thing. Go ahead, say it. Go ahead.
We're gonna kill these radiation eating monsters with a nuke.
Not just a nuke, the most powerful nuke we can find.
That's like,
it's just
that's like trying to like kill someone with a buffet.
I know. It's like the most insane thing. Like I was literally, I swear, I must have been sitting in the theater just like blink, blink. My eyes just like, what did he just? I thought I heard. Wait, like I don't understand what you're saying. And then they actually have another character say like, well, do you think it's a bad idea to drop the nuke? And then there's a African American military guy who's like, well, this nuke is more powerful than any other nuke. It'll just destroy them upon impact. Anything that we drop on them is 100 times more powerful than, and you're just sitting there like, really? At that point, it's like if you need somebody to tell you that the plan is stupid and then somebody else to go, listen, just ignore the stupidity of the plan.
That's like saying, that, this steak is 10 times more delicious than anything that we've done before.
I was just like, oh my God, I almost fell out of my chair. I just couldn't believe it. I was just astounded as to how bad that bit of writing was. I was just like, oh my God. And at this point in the theater, I think I was like sitting with my head in my hands, just kind of like, what just happened to this movie? Like what? The biggest problem is like anyone can say like, hey man, this is a Godzilla movie. They're supposed to be goofy, and I'm like, that's one thing if you're playing it like sort of tongue in cheek, and you're just like, this is a fun adventure movie. But this is being played like this is like serious. This is serious stuff, kids.
Yeah.
Like this is really happening. It's not like Pacific Rim, where again, it's like. No, I don't hate comparing it to Pacific Rim because I'm actually really pissed that this movie like opened up at 93 million and Pacific Rim is considered to be somewhat of a like disappointment or a bomb because it's like far superior in every single way to Godzilla like Pacific Rim is. But I'm just sitting there like thinking to myself like, what the fuck? Like this Pacific Rim played it fun and loose, but had seriousness in it.
Yeah.
There's no sense of humor to this movie. There's no sense of like, joking around. This is like serious disaster movie stuff, right?
Right.
And it's played that way, and you're supposed to take it seriously. It's got gravitas, and once you introduce that level of stupidity into the movie, it's just like, really, I can't go with you. I cannot go with you there. You know what I mean? Yeah,
there were a number of tonal shifts, throughout that were just difficult to do,
Yeah.
Difficult to roll with.
Exactly. I agree with you. Yes, I agree with your dog.
My dog is not happy about the tonal shifts.
Oh, he should not be. Neither was Kristian. So at this point, they're getting to San Francisco, right?
Yeah, they get to San Francisco, and I mean, like, there's the whole thing of like moving the nukes to San Francisco on the trains.
And then that the nukes can't have. First of all, they're gonna.
Well, because of the EMPs. The EMPs would knock out any sort of an electronic device. So they have to put a manual device on there to
manual timer.
Manual timer on it.
But guess what? They're bringing the nukes in on, Paul. They're bringing the nukes in
train.
on a train. That's powered by what, Paul?
Electricity.
Yeah, exactly.
That really, and it kind of comes down to one of the more interested, like when they finally are having the showdown there in San Francisco, and the monsters let off their EMP, and all the jets start falling from the sky and everything. It's like, didn't you learn anything from Honolulu?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
why are you still flying things over these things?
I
You
know.
know that they're going to crash you.
Exactly. I mean, here's the worst thing about the EMP thing, Paul. The worst, the absolute worst, stupid motherfucking thing about the goddamn EMPs. I'm going to tell you it right now because it makes me so angry. The EMP thing is just added in to be like the ultimate weapon against man. It's like it's like the magical thing that well, we just can't do anything against these monsters. They have an EMP. They will disable all our technology. We're useless against them. And it's just like that is so just like it's such a what's the term? It's not MacGuffin. It's just such a tacked on oh, isn't this like a clever little bit? Instead of thinking making these monsters just badass in and of themselves and not able to be stopped. It's like, no, we've got to have the EMP. And then their plan, they're going on a train with a nuke, and guess what shows up? The thing that's the monster to eat the nuke that they want to take out the monster with. And then the train stops running because the EMP. I mean, it's a holy mess. The whole thing is a holy mess. I was just sitting there I can't believe I'm watching this. I can't believe that a writer and a studio looked at this and were like, this sounds like a good idea. This is exactly what logical, proficient, competent military people would do in a crisis like this.
Yeah, the military, while they participated very heavily in the making of this film,
Did they?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I think obviously, but they don't come off looking very well.
Oh my God. Do they look like idiots or what? I can imagine a military commander of any kind watching this movie and just being like, what the fuck? Oh my God. And then okay, so you sort of get to the city, and like you said, there's a really, really good scene with Godzilla approaching the city, and the kids are on the bridge.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's a really amazing scene, except for the fact that once Godzilla shows up and he's about to tear apart the Golden Gate Bridge, nobody moves. They're just standing there.
Yeah.
All the cars are sitting still. The military's not trying to. And then one dude, the bus driver who just happens to be driving the school bus that Ford's child is in, coincidentally, panics and tries to drive off the bridge like anybody else should.
Yeah.
Everyone should be getting off the bridge. The military try and stop him from getting off the bridge.
You can't take those kids out of here.
Yeah, what? It's like, what are you doing? He's the only smart person on this bridge. Everyone should be running off the bridge. Traffic jam, no traffic jam, whatever. Everyone should be, but they're all standing there waiting for Godzilla to show up. Nobody's, and then eventually I guess they all freak out and panic, but they should have had that. You should have been as soon as he gets out of the water, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Look,
I haven't gotten riled up on the podcast.
I
ever.
agree. It's in it. It's kind of entertaining. I mean, it's when everything comes together in the last, that last 20 minutes, that last third act of the movie, we get some great monster smackdowns. I think
they're too short, though. You've waited too long for them, and then by the time you get there, it's just I don't care about Godzilla because you haven't had a chance to identify with Godzilla at all. You haven't had a chance to bond with the monster, and then once they fight, it's just I thought it was a very quick climax. Don't you?
It got over with, quicker than I wanted it to. I wanted more. I definitely wanted more fighting from the monsters. I don't know. I disagree with you about Godzilla, though. I mean, for just maybe it's my years and years of goodwill built up toward him or something. But when he shows up, and he looks like classic Godzilla. He doesn't look like that horrible, CG thing from the 90s,
Yeah.
He looks like the Godzilla that we all know, and he acts like the Godzilla that we all know, like I don't know. I turned into a 7-year-old kid, and at that point, it was all on for me. I was ridiculously happy as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's it. Maybe that's like some sort of like, you know, key into my brain or something. Just hearing that roar, I was there.
Boo, I would have been so much happier if I'd have heard that roar earlier in the movie. And then I could have had like a big monster smackdown fight. And I could have been like, and maybe Godzilla loses, or maybe some other monsters show up, or, something.
Yeah.
Like at this point, at the end of the movie, I'm fed up with how stupid this is. I'm bored. I almost got up and walked out at one point. And I was just like, dude, this is like going nowhere. And then finally, again, earlier in the movie, Godzilla does show up. And all you get is to see like the full figure Godzilla, and he roars, and then they cut away, and then finally you get to the end of the movie, and you're still bogged down by all this stupid human stuff. Like we've got to get the bomb, and no, just give me the monsters fighting. I don't care about Ford. I don't care about the nuclear bomb. I don't care about you having to, light the gas truck, fuel truck on fire to destroy the eggs of the creature.
Yeah.
I want to see Godzilla, and I want to see monsters, and I want to see fighting, and that's all I want to see. And at the end, they give you that, but it's such an anticlimactic fight to me, because I was like, they keep cutting away and still showing like the human moments, and by that time, I'm so fed up with the humans in the movie that I don't care what happens to them. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, the audience that I was with, like that little bit where Godzilla like holds the monster's mouth open and breathes his fire down its. I was like, yeah, that was great. If the movie had not pissed me off much more before that moment, I would have been like, all right. And my audience cheered too, like when that happened.
Honestly, the first time that that Godzilla's scales start to crackle, and I'm just like, oh, he's going to use the atomic breath, it's coming, that made me happy. I mean,
I mean the atomic breath, like I was waiting for, and I was like, but there's definitely a part of me that's like, finally, and I know that there were some teenage kids, like when Godzilla finally did show up the first time, I actually heard a couple of them be like, oh God, finally, you know what I mean? It's just like, it really was, it's too much of a wait. You're there to see Godzilla, you're there to see monsters. Pacific Rim gives you what you want. Like, and I think that this movie fails where the very first Incredible Hulk movie failed. It's like, you want to see the Hulk smash shit up. When you go to a Godzilla movie, you want to see Godzilla smash shit up. It doesn't have to be a brainless movie, but don't try and make like all the human moments so poignant and powerful, that you overshadow what everyone is there to really see.
Yeah.
And that's to see Godzilla, and that's for me. By the end, maybe I was so wrapped up in my anger for the movie that all goodwill for me had been lost, and I was just like, oh man, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't hate, fortunately for me, that last bit was enough for me. I was like, okay,
wow.
I was, it made me happy enough that last act for me, like, was good. But at the same time, and maybe it's also that I'm in the middle of doing something myself, I'm looking at, this, and I'm thinking, okay, they've made some missteps here, how do I avoid making those same mistakes? What is it? Again, my friend, one of my friends had said, Godzilla is one of those movies that really makes you look long and hard at why you like it or hate it, at why, what you love about it and what you hate it. You really have to look at that, and and it really did. I'm just like, okay, like, there were some elements I loved, but I spent a lot of time looking at the things that didn't work too. I can't like just sort of hate it overall, because of the things that when they did work for me, I was just like, wow, that was really effective, But again, I wish that it would have been. It wasn't the Godzilla movie I was hoping for. Godzilla the character was what I was hoping for. Like, that was what I wanted to see. I wanted to see that Godzilla. I just want to see that Godzilla fight some more monsters and, be more awesome.
Yeah, and I'm exactly with you, and that's the thing, is the promise of those trailers. Those are some really fantastic trailers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That got you really excited for the movie, and that's the thing is I don't think I would be so angry at this movie if I didn't want to like it as badly as I did, because I freaking love Godzilla. I am just like you. I grew up, I watched all those movies. I mean, they're not as compelling to me now as an adult, but like, seriously, I sat down with Mothra and watched it with my daughter, and we had a good time. I mean, it's really funny seeing what a little 7-year-old girl is concerned with. Like, she's like, is the egg going to be okay?
Yeah.
Is the egg going to be okay? Like, that's all she cares about. She doesn't care about the monster. She's worried about, like, if the egg is going to be okay. But at the same time, like, she was entertained. She thought it was interesting. She didn't get bored. She didn't get up and, like, leave,
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, is like, these movies have been such a part of our growing up, and for them to just make this sort of like badly I just think that they just didn't know what they were like aiming for. It starts off as a message movie, but then veers off into like a paranoid thriller, and then kind of becomes like sort of like, what is the monster? Are we gonna see it? And then it just doesn't gel. It's all over the place, and I just really wanted to like it, but with every bit of misstep and every bit of like stupidly thought out story, I just got like more and more frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not like that much anymore. Like, I'll go see a movie and I can be pretty forgiving,
Yeah.
but the one thing that a movie cannot do, even if it's a bad movie, it cannot bore me. And Godzilla bored the shit out of me. I was bored. I was like, I am so bored. I don't care about these people. I don't care about, the monsters. I want to see Godzilla, but I don't want to wait 2 hours to see him. I just felt like, I really felt kind of ripped off. And it's not as bad to me as Michael Bay's Transformers movie,
Right.
but I felt almost just as angry,
Yeah.
like leaving. I felt like, this is bad, and if they make a sequel, I mean, I don't know if this is one thing where I was like, there's room for improvement. If they made a sequel, maybe it'll be better than this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's a formula
Well-
that maybe they could learn from. But if it just makes $1 bajillion and they're like, fuck it, let's just do what we're going to do, then then the sequel will be just as bad as this.
Yeah, and I don't really, we've talked about this in the past too. I don't like this trend of like, making movies that are essentially placeholder for the promise of a future like awesome movie.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you. I hear it.
And so yeah, I'd like to see, them just go ahead and make the straight up super awesome movie.
Yeah, just make a great first movie. And I hate that, fans are like, well, the next one will be great. And I'm like, no, I wanted this one to be great,
Mm-hmm.
And I just, look, like stuff like the Avengers or whatever, Iron Man, Captain America, it's not Lawrence of Arabia, but at least you had characters that you cared about. Stuff kind of made sense. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not Shakespeare, but it doesn't insult your intelligence. And I just felt there was so much stuff. I even like Star Trek Into Darkness better than this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was just like, and I was more forgiving of that movie than I was of this. So, like, I don't know. Maybe my expectations were set too high by the trailer. But that's the thing. Again, the cardinal sin is boring me. And if I'm bored, and I've become a lot less like, nitpicky as I get older, because in my 20s I would nitpick everything, and this one I was willing to let stuff go, but I was just like, dude, you've bored me. And as soon as you got rid of Bryan Cranston, I mean, that honestly was the moment where I was like, we're in trouble right now.
Yeah,
because
especially when they had just set, like, literally there was a line just before he dies where where they're setting him up as, oh yeah, we need him. We need his knowledge. He's the authority that we're looking for.
Exactly.
And then he dies. Yeah, that was tough.
And let me tell you, the one thing that this movie has succeeded in doing is getting me worried about Age of Ultron, because those two, Elizabeth Olsen and what's his face from Kick-Ass, these were not their best performances. I really like him in Kick-Ass. I haven't seen Kick-Ass 2, but and I haven't seen her in anything else but this. But honestly, I'm worried that these two may be the centerpieces of the next Avengers movie. I'm like, I don't know. Because they were both very wooden to me. There was no real emotion. They were just kind of going through the steps of like again, I did not believe she was a mother for a second. You know what I mean? I believe maybe him more as kind of like an out of place dad because he hadn't been there for a long time. But for her, I just didn't buy her for a second. So I'm the only thing that this thing has done is gotten me worried about Avengers, the next Avenger. But it's Joss Whedon, so he's a much better director
and I don't
than this guy.
necessarily think that they're going to be the centerpiece of the movie. Like if Avengers, doesn't seem to necessarily be a centerpiece, kind of thing. Like it's very much a ensemble. And with this one, it's interesting, as many places as you go to and as many, people as are affected by the monsters, it's like that's sort of like why it felt so ridiculous that they were, kept putting Ford in there. It's like, okay, you have to, like, he's your guy. It's like, well, why couldn't you have, just a moment, like where they're attacking the city and we follow a different group of characters who are sort of from that city or who are in that, it's like, I think that would have been a much more interesting movie if you didn't really have to have a, main hero. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly.
Especially since he's like, the whole thing is like that they keep building him up is that he's like such a badass bomb diffuser and he never diffuses a bomb in the whole movie.
I know. But that's the thing is that it's exactly what I felt when Cloverfield came out. Like Cloverfield, the big weakness of Cloverfield is that you have to believe that no matter what happens, one dude is going to carry this camera through the biggest disaster to hit New York City since, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And Cloverfield, for me, would have worked as a much better movie if somebody drops the camera, somebody else picks it up, and then you see different footage from like a New York City cab driver, a bodega owner, a Wall Street guy. You could have seen different perspectives on the attacks. And that again, you are so totally right that once you stick with one guy that has to be like the big badass and you've got a piece where these monsters have to be in different cities, you have to figure out the completely implausible way of getting him to those cities, so that he's following, if he's not the monster expert. If it had been Bryan Cranston, there's the excuse built in. We've got to get this guy to wherever the monsters are. Done. Or if you're following Ken Watanabe, who should have been the lead character.
Agreed.
And, if you have him following the monster, there's your excuse. But no, instead we've got this boring as white toast military guy following the monsters around who has no real reason to be there. And that is like the biggest flaw of the whole movie right there. You don't grow to care about him all that much. You don't grow to care about his family. So if that's the case, if you're just going to have vignettes of like some dude traipsing around after monsters, do what you said. Just make different groups of characters that you can spend a little bit of time with and have their lives fucked up by giant monsters.
Yeah. All right, that's the movie we're making now. Let's go.
At some point, yes. Let's do it. Let's write the Attack of Part-Time Fanboy.
That's what you should title this one, dude.
Well, that's what this is. Attack of Part-Time Fanboy for sure. Oh my God. I don't know. Any other last thoughts on Godzilla? I mean, honestly, I've wasted so much breath on this movie. I just feel like it's not even worthy of of me just like talking about it anymore. I'm so illogically angry about this movie, and there's so many other things that I could be angry about, but right now this is it. I don't know.
A man's got to have something, so you go ahead and take that.
Holy cow. Yeah. So I don't know. If you are listening out there, track the original down. It's not as technologically savvy as anything that's being made, but it is still powerful, and it's a really good piece of cinematic history. The original Japanese, the Raymond Burr one is good too. The American version, it's almost like a totally different kind of movie, but honestly, the original is, to me, still the most powerful and the best. So I don't know. Woo! All right. Any last thoughts, Paul, on Godzilla 2014?
Still better than the Matthew Broderick version.
Yes. Okay. I will give it that. I will say that it is better than that, which, that is not a very high standard to live up to, but like there was definitely oh man. Why can't Americans just make a good Godzilla movie, man? Like why? We've got all the tools. Like I don't know. All right, well this has been the Godzilla 2014 Smackdown episode of Part-Time Fanboy. I'm Kristian Horn, who is exhausted at this point, and that is Paul Edwards, and this has been another episode of Part-Time Fanboy. Join us again next week, where hopefully we're going to talk about X-Men: Days of Future Past, which will hopefully not incense me as much as this. I can't imagine it will. I can't imagine. All right, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Part-Time Fanboy.